Hey guys, so we've looked at plenty of heavy weapons, but what about some primary weapons? You know, the stuff that you're actually using the most. Well, today's video is going to take a look at Chaos Dogma versus Outbreak Prime in the raid, with some comments for outside of the raid as well. I think Outbreak Prime is a pretty well-designed weapon for what I believe it was intended for. Something like Touch of Malice excelled in select portions of the raid thanks to its bonus. It allowed you to get the raid done much quicker, especially in the second half. But outside of the raid, it really didn't get used that much, as people didn't really want to risk dying. Outbreak Prime, on the other hand, does a lot of what Touch of Malice does, which is basically be good in the raid, while also being good, but not as good, outside of the raid or outside of non-fallen activities. That's something I really enjoy about the weapon. I can use it anywhere and pretty much be good to go. So let's start looking at some stats. With the Chaos Dogma, hitting multiple crits in a row is very rewarding, putting 2 shots back into your magazine instead of the usual 1 with the regular triple tap. This means as long as you're landing crits, you get to shoot for a pretty long time. Vosik is our first target. With Chaos Dogma, the most amount of shots you can get in a row is 44. That is if every single shot is a crit with a fully upgraded weapon. You should have enough time to land all 44 shots as well before you need to go and run. My Chaos Dogma is 384 in this clip. As an example, here's a test that I did where I hit 36 crits, 3 hits, and 2 misses. I ended up with 151,340 damage. A perfect set, which is 44 crits and no misses, would be 173,712 damage. If we have on Weapons of Light and we put that onto a perfect set, we'd end up with 234,476 damage, as we'd expect, since Weapons of Light is a 35% damage boost when you have Illuminated. I did a couple of test runs and got a 208,000 run and a 219,000 run, once again both of them not being perfect, but being perfect isn't completely outside the realm of possibility. Now we bust out the 390 Outbreak Prime, and folks, this thing melts Fallen. A lot of people didn't seem to realize it at the time, but the Outbreak Prime will proc the Siva nanites on both a headshot kill or via hitting 4 consecutive bursts on a target, making it a pretty good option for killing fallen mages or bosses. On the 4th burst in a row, the damage of the shots themselves also do more damage. You can see that I'm doing 1,392 to the head per shot, but on the 4th burst, I do 2,087 damage, which is a 50% damage increase. The Siva nanites are also dealing 588 damage per nanite, when against non-fallen, they only do about 25% of that. The nanites are obviously what pushes this weapon over the edge, as with 3 full magazines of firing without Weapons of Light, even with a sort of false start in this clip, I do 249,002 damage, which is better than a perfect Chaos Dogma 44 bullet set with Weapons of Light. I understand that the Chaos Dogma is underleveled, but I don't think anyone is going to have an Outbreak Prime below 390. One thing of note is that the very first test that I did seemed to generate almost double the nanites, and I ended up doing well over 300,000 damage with Outbreak Prime with no Weapons of Light buff, which is really weird. I still don't know why this happened. Perhaps the nanites were double tapping the boss, I'm not sure, but I did not include this run in my results due to it being a very, very big outlier. With Weapons of Light and with Outbreak Prime, I get a 325,000 damage run, and I get a 333,000 damage run, which, again, easily clears the amount of damage I do with Chaos Dogma. It's kind of tough to tell what a perfect set of Outbreak Prime would be doing damage-wise. If we want to compare to our heavy weapons, Sleeper Simulant still wins on a pure damage test. We did 385,353 damage with Weapons of Light with a 380 Sleeper Sim, and that beats our average of about 330,000 with the Outbreak Prime with Weapons of Light. And even with 1 Shadow Shot with Outbreak Prime, my damage still came short versus a Sleeper. In our G-Horn test, we said that 6 G-Horn rockets plus a round of snipes was about 330,000 damage with Weapons of Light. Outbreak Prime came in at basically that amount as well with Weapons of Light. However, it is going to be a little bit easier to DPS with Outbreak Prime than it would be to DPS with a G-Horn and then having to worry about switching to a sniper and then you might miss a snipe, whereas with Outbreak Prime, it's a lot easier to hit your shots. Something to consider though is heavy ammo. Sometimes you're not going to get full heavy ammo. Sometimes you're only going to get half. Sometimes you'll get nothing, although with the raid gloves that is unlikely. But still, there will be times where you get screwed on heavy ammo. And if you're not getting full heavy ammo, then Outbreak Prime just gets better for each brick of heavy that doesn't drop for you. Primary ammo is pretty much always available, not to mention that Outbreak Prime is much easier to handle than Sleeper Stimulant, and comes with way less risk compared to G-Horn and Sleeper to an extent. This is why I use Outbreak Prime during Vosik at this time. Outbreak Prime is great during all portions of this encounter, and it is a great boss killing weapon as well. I can save my heavy for stuff like the monitors and captain spawns, and same with my special ammo. The primary is all that I need. However, one thing I still need to test is Black Spindle, which will be our next video. And then we go to Aksis. The biggest thing I can point out here is that Aksis does not count as a Fallen for the purposes of the Outbreak Prime. The nanites will not do their Fallen boosted damage to him at all, although on the 4th burst of your Outbreak Prime shots, you will get the bonus headshot damage. We'll take a look at Chaos Dogma first. Perfect cycle is 44 shots, so let's keep it at a perfect cycle yet again. 3,589 per headshot with a 384 weapon at 44 shots. That's 157,916 damage when we're perfect. I had a not perfect run, magazine was only half loaded, but you know, these things can happen. I ended up with a 154,327 damage run, which is still pretty good damage considering what a perfect cycle would look like. Now we break out the Weapons of Light, and I have a very solid run. In fact, it is a perfect run, getting 44 crits, only slowing down to refresh my buff, but I am fast enough to keep my shots going. I get the 213,180 damage score, which is indeed a perfect Chaos Dogma magazine, and yes, I too surprised myself with that. Outbreak Prime's turn, and this time around, it's a much, much closer fight. I can get out about 3 magazines of Outbreak Prime, including movement to the boss, plus the weapon's bubble drop to make sure that range is not a factor. In more ideal conditions where I would not need to move, more damage could be applied, but we'll just take a look at 3 magazines for now. Keep in mind that during all of these tests, both Outbreak Prime and Chaos Dogma, no reload speed bonuses were equipped. Without Weapons of Light, after the final stun, I do a less than perfect set of 3 magazines, dealing a total of 174,171 damage, which, to be fair, is still higher than a perfect Chaos Dogma set by about 17,000 damage. 17,000 damage is 0.15% of the boss's total health, so for reference, it's essentially nothing. With Weapons of Light, I do a pretty dang close to perfect set of shots. The overwhelming majority of the shots are crits. I end up with 224,406 damage after 3 magazines, which is about 11,000 more damage than the perfect Chaos Dogma set with Weapons of Light. But once again, it is still very, very close. Outbreak Prime, I think, just barely gets an edge because Chaos Dogma relies on near perfect shooting, whereas with Outbreak Prime, you can get away with less than perfect and still basically be about the same. However, I imagine once the weapon attack values are evened out, and there isn't such a gap, maybe 400 versus 400, then this number battle will become even closer together, once again, making the damage gaps negligible, meaning you can use whichever weapon that you want. Important to note that neither of these weapons will beat Dark Drinker, Sleeper Stimulant, or G-Horn. You should always prioritize those weapons first before opting for your primary. Given that all of those weapons are exotics, that means Chaos Dogma, at least until I find something else or research something else, will be my primary weapon going forward for this encounter. I haven't tested Black Spindle yet, but I imagine Black Spindle will still be way above the primary weapon numbers. Outside of the raid, I'll say that you're going to be fine with either weapon, but I would use Outbreak Prime against Fallen Siva dudes for sure. The bonus damage just melts things so incredibly well. It's going to be rare that you get to take advantage of a 44 shot string of shots in heroic strikes or anything like that, which I think gives a slight edge to Outbreak Prime. A lot of people have been clamoring for a buff to Outbreak Prime for non-Siva Fallen stuff, and I would both agree and disagree. I agree because right now the nanite damage just seems really negligible when you do get it to proc outside of the raid, but I disagree because too much of a buff might cement it as the PvE weapon to use for everything. You could reduce the 15-second internal cooldown on the headshot proc down a little bit to make getting those headshots more rewarding. A slight damage boost could probably do the trick as well if you wanted to buff it, but if it didn't get buffed, I would be alright with that too. It's a great Siva and Fallen killing weapon, it's solid everywhere else, and can even hold its own in PvP pretty well. So I'm happy with the state of the weapon as a whole right now. But that'll do it for Chaos Dogma versus Outbreak Prime. I realize that it seems like I'm constantly finding out new stuff to use, and oh, this thing is better than that thing, oh, but wait, here's this other thing for now that's better. I can only test so many things so quickly, and people have been asking for specific comparisons and yada yada, so I'm doing what I can, but I still think, you know, it's pretty interesting to watch. The next video will be covering Black Spindle. That's easily been the most requested video after this one. It's been pretty fun finding out certain bits of information and being able to continue to min-max my builds and my loadouts and all that kind of stuff. Also, I do plan on doing a best loadouts video, probably sometime after the hard mode comes out, if you're just getting sick and tired of all this math, if you just want to wait until everything's all done and I put it into a best of video, that's coming, so don't worry. That's going to do it for me, though. If you enjoyed this video, a positive rating would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.